This one's just about a bridge. Sorry about that. Rio's water sucks. Or at least it used to. As it turns out, the big flat area where the water is calm enough to anchor large ships might also have been stagnant enough to be a bit of a swamp. Why the Portuguese decided to put a city at this exact point is another question entirely, but by 1565, they were here, and drinkable water wasn't. Now this may have been a bit of a setback for any Portuguese colonists who enjoyed not getting cholera, but thankfully a solution was close at hand. In the middle of the giant mountain range directly to their south, the Carioca River carried fresh rainwater down from the cliff that now has the giant Jesus statue down to the mouth of the Guanabara Bay. All you needed to do was divert that water over the mountains, and your city's location would be advisable again. The only problem with this plan was that you had to get all that water over a giant mountain range. Rio was nice, but it wasn't miracles of modern engineering nice. And so the people who thought Rio de Janeiro was a good place to put a city were left to wallow in their slightly undrinkable water supply. Portugal quickly changed its mind on that assessment when gold was discovered in the mountains to the north of Rio in 1698. By 1723, a groundbreaking aqueduct carried river and canal water directly to the heart of the rapidly growing city. After a rebuilding in 1750, visitors to this gold-rush port were greeted with a gleaming white double row of arches barreling out of the Santa Teresa Mountains, and as much potable water as the Carioca River could provide. Before there were any beaches at Copacabana and Ipanema, before the Jesus statue, Carnival, or scantily clad women, Rio finally had something man-made to catch your eye. But by the time the Portuguese royal family relocated the imperial capital to Rio in 1807, many more canals and water sources had been connected to the city's supply, and the canal from the Carioca was becoming obsolete. Thankfully, another thing that was becoming obsolete was the idea of packing everyone who wanted to live in Rio within walking distance of the old town center. At the end of the century, the Santa Teresa Highlands were starting to fill with new housing development, and in 1896 a tram line was run across the old aqueduct stretch of the Arcos de Lapa to connect these new residents with downtown. Once again, this engineering masterwork of the 18th century became the peak of modernity at the end of the 19th, and is still in operation today. And in a city with such dramatic geography, this centuries-old Romanesque aqueduct should be the heart of a Brazilian Segovia. Much like in Segovia, the Arcos de Lapa tower above a central city square, with a cathedral and community institutions close at hand. The neighborhood around it is known for its vibrant nightlife, and the glorious Teatro Municipal can be seen peering over the skyscrapers of the modern commercial center, a mere 3 blocks away. You'd think this monument to Brazilian history would define the city it helped to hydrate over 200 years ago. Yet as its glorious channel flies overhead, the ground beneath it, like the stagnant waters of 1565, still inexcusably sucks. It's clear what they were trying to go for with this. Finding themselves with an old aqueduct that looks like Roman Segovia, they tried to treat it like Roman Segovia. The aqueduct there is a towering centerpiece to one of the most famous tourist traps in the world. Restaurants, shops, and apartments all fight for access to a plaza under its highest point, which often is host to events and attractions in its own right. And if one vantage point of this wonder of ancient plumbing isn't enough, the roof of the Office of Tourism functions as a second plaza overlooking the first. Even without the tourist attraction, this plaza and the roads leading out to its west are in a natural low point between the old walled city and the Academia de Artilleria, which is why the flat aqueduct had to be built so high above ground in the first place. Nearly every part of the city to the north and south naturally empties out into this central meeting point, if for no other reason than it's the one place you'll never have to climb uphill to reach. The Plaza de Azeguejo at the aqueduct is merely the culmination of a series of commercial boulevards, ancient alleyways, plazas, squares, churches, and parks that form the heart of today's urban area. Cars can barely guide themselves through the widest of roads as they approach the aqueduct, and are banned from many of the smaller ones entirely, encouraging pedestrians to branch out from the main center and enjoy the surrounding neighborhood. Of course, the realities of large, popular attractions that bring in thousands of outsiders every year means that there has to be some major road access somewhere nearby, and Segovia's aqueduct is no exception. On the east side of the aqueduct isn't necessarily a major expressway, but there is a broad roundabout for car and bus unloading and underground parking for those driving in from Madrid. The hills get a bit more chaotic here, and buildable land more sparse. Yet even though this is the side with the McDonald's and the Burger King, it seamlessly sets aside yet another plaza where you can enjoy your fast food in the shadow of a much more impressive thing a foreigner once introduced into a Spanish city. From every angle possible, Segovia actively wants you to check out its aqueduct. Not only does it succeed masterfully, but the economy of Segovia succeeds right along with it. But in the Lapa neighborhood of downtown Rio de Janeiro, the entire city avoids the old Carioca Aqueduct as vehemently as possible. On almost all sides, the space and plaza around the base of the structure is greeted by steel fencing and concrete walls. The pavement and curbs are cracked, and the archways seem only to attract the homeless who have literally nowhere else to go. The tram still runs over the top between Santa Teresa and the skyscrapers beyond, but the only view worth having here is 57 feet above the ground. Even the skyscrapers themselves turn their windowless concrete slab utilitarian sides to the aqueduct, a glaring admission that, specifically in this direction, there's nothing here you'd ever want to look at. On paper, this doesn't make any sense. Just like Segovia's Plaza de Azoguejo, Rio's Plaza Carioca sits front and center before the tourist trap to be. Alleyways and popular commercial avenues radiate out from under its arches, and redundant parks and squares linger sometimes less than a block away. To the west are two large nightclubs just below the imposing Metropolitan Cathedral, and the State University of Rio de Janeiro owns a small lot to the east, while the business center of the city lies so close to the north that it looks ready to expand right on top of it all. If that's all you knew about it, you'd think it would be such a college town and corporate hangout that tiny Segovia wouldn't stand a chance in comparison. Yet even a basic overhead view of the surrounding blocks makes it clear that this is the one spot in all of downtown Rio de Janeiro where no one seems to want to build anything. Even with the heart of the city all around it, the Arcos de Lapa have built the perfect defenses against anyone wanting to be there from all possible lines of approach. Three high-rise laden blocks to the north of the Plaza Carioca is the Teatro Municipal do Rio de Janeiro, the ornate centerpiece of a long strip of tiled plazas surrounded by Parisian-inspired institutions and imposing 60s-style skyscrapers. Having the Municipal Theater, the National Library, and the National Museum of Fine Art all at one intersection is so overboard it would embarrass the Smithsonian. If it weren't for the slightest bend in the Rua Evaristo de Veiga, you would just about have a clear view from the front steps of the theater to the diagonally placed Carioca Aqueduct disappearing into the hillside. Yet in that blind 3-block stretch, all hope of connecting the two architectural wonders falls apart completely. If you try to head down this road from the aqueduct, the first thing you're greeted by is a long graffiti-filled wall, 5 lines of traffic, and a single crosswalk, which leads to the middle of a concrete slip lane, which is bisected by 2 more worn-through crosswalks, leaving you facing the wrong way at your choice of wall. But assuming you do turn yourself back around and head up the right road, you'll be greeted on the right by some barbed wire and overgrown trees, followed by a long shuttered loading dock that goes on until the next cross street. On the left, it's somehow even worse. The military police headquarters owns nearly half the stretch of the road on this side, and it's decided to use the entire corner by the Carioca Aqueduct as a shabbily walled open-air parking lot. For the rest of the stretch, the police quarters and jail impose themselves directly against the street, leaving the smallest sliver of a sidewalk running beneath them. The road itself is wide enough for 3 lanes, but the lane markings have long worn through, leaving traffic to just decide where it wants to go amongst itself, and making it dangerous to break from the single-file sidewalks to walk on the street. By the time you're close enough to see the theater building, you feel like you've just crawled the wrong way up a highway on-ramp. Well, in effect, that's essentially what the Rua Evaristo de Veiga is. The road it empties out into alongside the aqueduct has nothing alongside it to induce anyone traveling by car to stop along any part of this stretch. There are no buildings, no shops or houses to drop anyone off in front of, and no crosswalks between this intersection and the overpass for the Avenida República do Chile farther to the north. The prime real estate that could be developed to the north is fenced off as the spiraling parking lot for the bizarre, towering Metropolitan Cathedral, which is designed to be entered by car from the lower road on the north side, while the Avenida República do Paraguay itself slips along past that to a series of parking lots around the Praça Tiradentes. No one on either of these streets that intersect on the north end of the aqueduct have any intention of stopping here, and unless they're in the military police, they couldn't if they tried. The west side, however, is far more promising. Here's the heart of Lapa's nightlife, where the Avenida Mem de Sa and the Rua Riachuelo cut through the gorgeous old city grid, packing it with bars and pubs under a wild tangle of trees. Its old architecture looks straight out of the Iberian coast, while new apartment towers sprinkled in ensure the neighborhood's always packed with people. Not only is it not wrong to call it the Greenwich Village of Rio de Janeiro, there's so many parallels between that famous Manhattan destination and here, you may be wrong not to. And just like the wedge of roads bounding the heart of Segovia, the Rua Riachuelo and the Avenida Mem de Sa meet perfectly to run under the aqueduct's arches together on their short run to the seaside. All they have to do is not mess up this approach, and Greenwich Village's Washington Square Arch will have to bow before Lapa's 70. Yet somehow within the span of a block, the entire neighborhood falls apart. At the southern end of the parking lot for the Metropolitan Cathedral, the only building left is the Fundação Progresso Community Center and nightclub. It's a nice-looking place, but since it's near nothing else, somebody decided it needed its own grandiose access road right to the Avenida Mem de Sa. It's at this exact point that another clever engineer built a really impressive mid-block Shell gas station. Directly to the west of these parallel features, there's no square foot of floor space that isn't clamoring to be a bar. To the east, there just isn't very much left to drink in. Cross past these unnecessary intersections, and before you're close enough to really see the aqueduct, you start to see nothing but metal fencing and walls. To the south, the children's charity has its basketball court, which is all well and good, but the immediate west side of the aqueduct stretch is inhabited by the outdoor bar off the Fundação Progresso nightclub and the full-block nightclub of the Circo Voador. Inexplicably, both are surrounded on all sides with large panels of steel fence, obscuring all evidence of anyone having fun whatsoever inside. There are no other bars or shops to bounce around to once you reach this end of the neighborhood, and instead of capitalizing on their monopolistic views of a piece of Brazilian history, they seem to want to hide it as much as possible. Behind the weathered arches, the Praça Carioca Aqueduct stretches out like an empty civic center parking lot. And this may be the perfect place to imitate a night out in the suburbs, but this close to the heart of Brazil's old imperial capital, it might be the most wasteful place for it. By the time this one-block stretch has reached the aqueduct itself, it ends up looking like nothing but an old piece of infrastructure that's only in the way. And on the eastern side of this triangle of obstruction, the layout doesn't get any better. Here lies the last chance the Praça Carioca Aqueduct has to attract customers, residents, or really anyone who isn't a stray tourist parked over a nearby curb. And in its defense, this approach has benefits the other two can't provide. The southern end of the Avenida Mem de Sa is a promising row of the same old Spanish row homes that Lapa stocks to the ceiling with booze just to the west. And nothing but a single building blocks a direct line of sight from the corner of the Praça to the Marina de Gloria and its ring of parks and monuments. It almost seems inevitable that this approach must attract at least some visitors, so much that the Praça almost stretches out to lure them in. But no one coming from this direction stands any chance of accidentally being attracted to the sunny plaza and its gleaming aqueduct. Bookended by blind corners on both sides, the southern stretch of would-be shops now lies shuttered for the day, with more than a couple roofs no longer fully intact. These lots seem poised to offer the same front-row views of the aqueduct in its sprawling central square as the Burger King in Segovia. But that prime location is trapped behind 6 lanes of Avenida Mem de Sa traffic, split in half by the most useless 3-lane wide road median in existence. Your view of the Arcos de Lapa is obstructed by sickly-looking planter square trees perched over Bronx Concourse brand gray cobblestones leading to nowhere. 10 years ago, this median at least had railings to sit on and trash collection, and the plaza beyond boasted grass-filled slopes to catch the eye. But all of that's gone now. All that's left is a 9-lane wide suicide run to the crumbling parking lot Carioca Aqueduct, and its dying patches of what someone once called landscaping. Any connection to points east of here runs into an absolute hellscape of an intersection. Our pathetic attempt at an oversized median has a counterpart on the other side, but there's no crosswalk to be able to get to it. The only crosswalks purportedly crossing the singular Avenida Mem-de-Sa are split with a solid 30-foot parallax for reasons still unclear. If you're able to navigate this maze of slip lanes, it's car dominance all the way down until you reach two separate competing highways that ring the coastline all the way from Botafogo to the airport. 60s urban renewal efforts may have cleared a waterside view for the Arcos de Lapa, but no mode of transportation will ever find a way to get you there from here. So here sits the crumbling palace courtyard of the once mighty Carioca Aqueduct. Once the pinnacle of man's conquest over nature in a colonial Brazil of centuries ago, it's now a piss-poor consolation prize for day laborers who came up short. There are no benches, little shade, no topography. Its scrubby foliage mars the ground like weeds, slowly overgrowing what once were paths and promenades, tossed before it to be devoured. Once there might have been some decorative steps and color to catch the eye, but even these have given way to a cobblestone infill that looks like a mistake. These recent cosmetic changes may seem an insult to the great architectural wonder that stands before it, but it's only a fitting home for a patriarch starved in isolation years before. Ultimately, the three corners of the Praça Cardeal Camará, the grand plaza of the Arcos de Lapa, point to three self-reinforcing blockades against any future growth. The approach from the west could be flooded with neon lights and signs. The median to the south bombarded with crosswalks and inviting features. You could even pedestrianize the road to the north entirely. But once any one of these gets you to the plaza, it doesn't offer you anything else at the other end. And in the absence of any side even trying, the city of Rio de Janeiro has turned all three into the off-ramps from its two expressways to the east. In all fairness, the city has tried to expand the medians and pedestrian spaces around the edges in recent years. But all that effort is wasted if all three corners of the neighborhood around the Carioca Aqueduct can't find a way to meet under its colonial arches. The city of Rio practically begs for this place to be the center point between the downtown skyscrapers, the Lapa nightlife, and the tourist-trapped seaside. But while the decadent Praça Passeio Público lies less than half a block away, even this short distance makes it look as if it's in another world entirely. So long as this is the case, the Arcos de Lapa will remain a capstone of ruin, holding the city of Rio apart with the sheer power of its neglect. Northward is just a wall. You know it ain't right. Westside you trip and fall. You know it ain't right. Finding out which way you're going isn't just the way that's shown. That's why they call you Shitty Borough, 'cause you shoe them. That's why they call you Shitty Borough. Then you leave them. That's why they call you Shitty Borough. You don't need them. Blocked away from town to town. Don't it seem to drag you down, making no nice evenings at all. That's why they call you Shitty Borough. 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 But what do you guys think? Are there any architectural or infrastructural wonders that are being neglected by the planning in your city? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up on your way out and share it with a friend. And if you want to see more videos like this, you can give our channel a subscription and head on over to the channel page and see all of our previous episodes.